Pam, Deb Brown here, and I'd like everybody to welcome Pam Slim. I first heard of you with your book, Escape from Cubicle Nation. And then you came up with Body of Work, which I had the great fortune and good luck to be able to work with you through that book for over a couple of days. And you've done it again, Pam, with the Widest Net. Oh my God. Give me a quick background on what this book is about and why someone should buy it.
Absolutely. Well, it's so good to spend time with you, Deb, because we do have this history of really digging in both to the earlier work and also to the work that I'm talking about in the book. I really saw after writing it that this is really what I view to be a third in the trilogy, starting with Escape from Cubicle Nation, as you said, that came out in 2009, where essentially I was just really helping people to leave the construct of corporate, those people who really wanted to do it effectively without financial hardship, to make a plan and get to be self-employed. In general, once people do that and you're setting your own hours and you're really running your own business, there's the natural process of really discerning, like, what really is that deeper work that I want to do? What is that business? What's the work? It can change for people over time. And that really is the heart of Body of Work, is a very thoughtful reflection on that work itself that you're creating. The natural kind of question that follows is, now I know the movement I want to start or the work that I want to do or the service or product I want to sell, then where is my audience? How can I really find people who are interested in what it is that I'm selling or who are interested in participating in this kind of movement that I have? And so the Widest Net is really essentially the answer to that question. The way we get there, which we'll talk about in depth today, is not looking at it from the perspective of how do I just bring everybody to me, but rather how do I naturally see that person who I want to connect with, my ideal customer, in the context of a vibrant ecosystem where they already are going for answers, so that the work that I do is about connecting and collaborating with people as opposed to setting up an individual empire.
That was a big bell ringer for me, and I'm going to have you talk about that in a little bit. I do want to mention, because I think it's important in our work in rural communities, when we say small businesses, the majority of people think of either retail or service, right? They think of maybe a brick and mortar where people are either selling something or providing a service. But all three of these books, while they can relate to that, are not necessarily only for that. Will you touch on just a little bit of other kind of businesses besides what we think of when we think of brick and mortar?
Yeah, it is, the classic thing every author says when somebody says, well, who's this book for and how are the ideas applicable? And they say everyone. I know it's kind of a short answer, but really in the kind of world of business, which you and I know is so diverse in terms of all kinds of things people are doing, everything from being artists who are selling their art in person or online, from service professionals that we know is a huge wide slice of people, doctors, lawyers, consultants, coaches, to people here like I know we have downtown that have brick and mortar businesses. We have the Main Street Learning Lab where I'm sitting right today, where we have all kinds of different businesses on our block. And to a greater extent now, there's a great example of a business a couple doors down that sells vintage furniture, but they, during quarantine especially, have kind of a hybrid business where not only do they sell it, but they have a really vibrant online community teaching people how to refinish their own furniture when nobody could go out and do it. So there's just these combinations of different types of business. To me, I really look at it from a fundamental perspective of when you have something that you want, like to sell one to many, that you really are looking for customers, this is a way for you to conceptualize and to think about it. When I look at what fits with the majority of the kind of clients that I work with on a day in and day out basis, it tends to be people more in like that service business or movement or change makers. So you're you're working with a big idea, you're working with individuals around transformational change. And certainly within my own experience, that's the most experience that I have, is working with those kind of folks.
It was awesome as I'm reading through it. You share some things. Let me pull my notes up. Why we need to have business values. And I would like for you to touch on that a little bit. And what are some of the common business values that we should be thinking about? Why do I need them? And what could they be?
Yeah. Well, it's funny. I was a consultant to large companies for a long time, and I know that many people roll their eyes when you start to talk about mission and values because they've maybe been rolled out in a way that didn't really feel authentic. But to me, values really are the kinds of things that you actually make decisions around. They can be, ways that you choose who to partner with. They can be a reason why you might be excited to work with a particular customer. They also can be reasons why you might not choose to work with somebody. And when you begin to define it, it actually is very personal in terms of who you are and how you're wired. We certainly live, right, in a world where we see not everybody at all has the same kind of fundamental values for the way they see the world and the way that they make decisions. But as business owners, a couple of the sources I often point people to, one is the VIA character strengths that are based on like components of positive psychology, where one thing I like about it is they looked at positive psychology kind of values across different cultures. So it's not just in one, it's really across global cultures. And that can be a way, there's a free assessment you can take online in which you can be looking at things that tend to be a higher level value of like justice or love or appreciation of beauty. There are things that once you take that and you can see what your particular assessment is, you can begin to define it for yourself. So I know for me, justice is, I think, number one on my list. And the way I see that it often filters down day to day in the way that I do my work is always thinking about contextually, like what are the power dynamics that are happening here, right? Are programs that are delivered really hitting the people who might, need the help the most? What systems are in place that are helping people or not? So that's one source of where people can look. My friend Brent Menswar wrote a great book recently also called The Black Sheep. I think it's just called Black Sheep. And that's a particular assessment he has as well, also free online, that gives you some of the language around values and assessment that you can choose. What's really important for people to remember is that you can select your values, but then define them in your own words in terms of what it is that means to you as a business owner.
Exactly. Like if I chose the word fun as one of my values, I want things to be fun. That could be
Yes.
very different to a whole bunch of people. Fun to me, I like looking at Excel spreadsheets. That's fun. So data
Yes.
might apply to me. Like, what do I want to do around data? Where to
Yeah.
somebody else, they're like, oh my God, not more spreadsheets, right? So
Yes.
explaining what that means is so important. Thank you. All right, let's go through here. Tell me what an ecosystem is, and can you kind of align this with some of the people right there in Mesa that you've been
Mhm.
working with? Tell me a story, Pam. Tell me a story
Yeah.
about ecosystem.
Well, it goes back to actually early stage research that I did for this book, where in 2015 I did what I call the unbook tour, which is where I with a nod and a wink to my friend Scott Stratton, who wrote Unmarketing and Unselling, and the idea was my degree in college was actually community development, and using non-formal education as a tool of social and economic change was my degree in college, which you'll
Wow.
see ended up absolutely turning into my reality 30 plus years later. But I've always had a lens on community building. Everywhere I go, I'm always connecting with people. What I was interested in working with entrepreneurs, and I'm a business coach, and so working with business owners that are growing their business is really seeing, in first of all, if I could put things together in a model in a way that made sense to people, especially people who didn't identify as natural community builders, as I know you and I are. We can't walk into a street anywhere and not sit down on the bench and have like a quiet, meaningful conversation, right? I think that's just sort of how we're wired.
Yep.
Many people are not wired that way. And so I really wanted to introduce a concept and get some feedback before I really started writing the book about what it was like. So in doing that, I visited 23 cities, places I had gone for book tours before, and really got amazing data about what it is that was, happening, what people were relating to and not relating to. And it actually really stimulated the idea. It was actually in Fargo, North Dakota, where you and I think, initially met.
Initially in
Um,
person, yes.
yeah, where I was sitting around the table with a startup founder, with somebody from the arts and culture, somebody from the mayor's office, And they were actually talking about like what are ways that we can really be working collectively to really create this feeling of kindness, so that no matter how somebody comes into downtown Fargo, they can always have this feeling of connection. And I remember sitting back and just kind of going like, people have conversations like this in their local towns about working together collaboratively and looking at shared ideas. And it actually really, that conversation, in addition to the conversations I had around the country, led my husband and I to open up this Main Street Learning Lab right here in downtown Mesa, in particular, really with the purpose of highlighting the leadership that exists with Native American business owners. My husband is Navajo and is Native American. Black, Indigenous, Latinx folks, Asian business owners, because we found in our own local area, there were amazing leaders where they were rarely seen in main kind of business events and things like that. So the whole way that I decided, and with my husband, to really start up this community here was to absolutely follow the method that I had shared with folks on the tour and really live into what it was that I was suggesting as a way to build community. And it was a joy. It was so fun, and it felt so empowering to really do it the way that I think it should be done, because we fund this space by our business. So we don't have outside funds. We're actually in a phase now after 5 years where we're looking to do some partnerships, which is great. But the first number of years, it really was where we truly just wanted to connect with people who we hadn't met before. And so we used all of these principles, like listen first, just greeting people warmly at the door, inviting them to sit down on the couch, and just saying, tell me about yourself, tell me about what you're trying to do, what are you working on, and just spent a lot of time with that kind of engagement. And then from that, really end up developing a very thriving place where all kinds of events were happening, and really unprecedented numbers of engagement. As in the entrepreneur space, a lot of cities are saying, how can we really be more inclusive in our practices? And we ended up just, because of the leaders that we connected with, where they were the ones leading all the programs, ended up creating a super connected space where we have served thousands of different diverse entrepreneurs.
I know I like following you along on social media to see just what it is you're working on and the kind of groups that are coming into your space. Now, where you're sitting right now, for everybody watching, she's back in the office space. If
That's
you
right.
go up front, you would see a much larger open space. That's just amazing.
Yes, I do. And I know I gave the
my.
background. I did want to just say, to make sure I answer your question about the ecosystem, right, as an example, because with that, I kind of gave the backstory, right? With that, to give an example of our local ecosystem, which I know you work with a lot in cities and towns, when you look at, I know, our shared mission that we share with other organizations, which is really to support the growth and development, especially of BIPOC entrepreneurs, there are all these players that are playing a different and complementary role. So we have the city, the small business, division of the city of Mesa, downtown developers. We have nonprofit entities and organizations. We have Arizona State University that's building 2 blocks down a brand new facility and doing a lot of community engagement. I use them as one of the examples in our book. We have residents, people who are living in our local neighborhoods, who have a point of view that we really want to be pulling in about what they want to see in their downtown area and the kinds of businesses and opportunities they want to see. So really the ecosystem, in this case, in a live physical space that we're part of, are all of the people who are connected via a shared mission to do specific work on behalf of like a shared audience. That's the way for purpose of definition for the book. The same thing could be true if we weren't in a physical location, which is what's true for a lot of my clients. Still, even if you have a totally virtual business and you serve people all over the world, there is an ecosystem that surrounds your ideal customer where they're looking for places in person and online to get parts of the answers to what you also contribute to as a service provider.
I think of gardens when I think of ecosystems,
Yeah.
having grown up out in the country, my grandma had the best garden ever. And, the big idea is to feed people.
Yeah.
So each individual vegetable or plant or crop in that garden
Mhm.
has a different role to play, and they're all
Yes.
part of the ecosystem. Small towns are like that.
Yes.
Large towns are like that to a degree. I know you're working very hard to make Mesa that way.
Mhm.
Um, it's exciting. It's very exciting. And I know one of the things that we both took away from Fargo, and I don't think we knew how to put it into words until we left there, is what is this connection we were looking for?
Mhm.
Because people weren't just sitting down and talking about how can we do everything with kindness, or what is my truth? What are my boundaries? How can we work together?
Yeah.
So you talk quite a bit about that in there, about how to work on developing relationships with people. God, I hate
Mhm.
that word relationships. It's such a buzzword. And it's more like, I think, developing friendships, because you want to get to know the person you're working with or doing things for.
Mhm.
Um, Again, my apologies for everybody for rambling. I'm just so excited. This book has me just all up in arms. It's awesome in a good way, in a good way. Um, Again, I would like to know a little bit more about um, who have you worked with? Talk about one of your clients that you're able to talk about that are
Mhm.
location bound there in Arizona,
Mhm.
that you've done
Yeah.
some work and have helped them use this book or the principles in this book to build their business in a great way.
For sure. So I just want to say, that one of the words I've been using a lot when you talked about like relationships can sound a little bit transactional sometimes or overused, or friendships. I love kinship, because there's
Oh,
something that's so powerful about, like, when you think about people as like as kinfolk, right? Cousins, aunties, uncles, that can
right?
be like a broader circle than maybe, everybody you're working with. It really does feel different, when you know that, like, you're connected, you're related to people, because we all are. We're like literally related from a biology perspective, and
Yes.
just the feeling that you have when you have that connection is one. So I love using
I'll
that as
I'll
a
remember to
reference.
steal that from you.
Yeah, absolutely. So in terms of a business, one of my favorite examples, I'm so glad you asked this one, because it immediately made me think of something I think you'll enjoy. And that is a couple doors down in Mesa. Mesa has a large LDS community, Latter-day Saint Mormon community,
Oh, I
in its
didn't know that.
history.
Okay.
Yeah, they're one of the, I think outside of Utah, one of the largest communities here. So that's a community that's been here for a long time in downtown. And so one of the oldest businesses here in downtown, that's just two doors down from where we are, is Pomeroy's, which is a men's clothing store. And the eldest, who opened the store, has just been around forever. Wayne Pomeroy, he passed a couple of years ago, but his daughter now, my friend Michelle, runs the business on a day-to-day basis. And then her daughter, Sarah, was the co-founder of a tech company. Both of them are former speech therapists, and they created an app called SLP Toolkit, which is for speech therapists, as an app in order for them to like create their plans and stuff that they need to do for their students. So here you have this third generation entrepreneur, and I probably we met at some local event or in the coffee shop or something, where they heard of me, and it was the day that they both like quit, that they formally left their school jobs, and the first day they started working, which I think was a June 1st, if I remember right. I just really started to work with them on planning their business, kind of looking at what it meant for them to transition into working full time. They had been doing it on the side of their teaching careers, and so had already, been working on the app and working on development. But we really look more at, what does it mean when you lean in full time? What does it mean for yourselves as thought leaders? I define thought leadership, another oft used term, but it's simply like, what is their point of view about how they would solve the problem that they were looking to help their speech therapist solve, right? Which is, they
Yep.
want to be providing excellent support for the kids and the schools. They want, plans and programs that are useful, and they wanted to create something to really make that process better and to make speech therapists also feel better in their profession. So we just did a lot of work in the initial months together, really setting that foundation for their next stage of growth. And then they grew. They ended up the app firm that they had hired to develop the app, they ended up actually pulling in like full time as partners some of the technical leads in the program. I've introduced my wonderful friend Ita Udo Emma, who has now been doing their marketing and social media management for the last couple of years, who also lives here downtown. And what I think is so amazing and wonderful about it is most people would have no idea that in literally the oldest kind of business that you have downtown, started by her grandfather, there's this very dynamic, interesting business that's serving, speech language therapists all over the world. And they utilize and create a lot of the technology that's really, cutting edge. But it's so much of the work that they do really is fit within this feeling, right? This feeling of connection, this feeling of place. And I think it's just really a unique example of an interesting mix. Also in the building now, I've introduced a couple of new clients because they have some rental space up front. We've had so many conversations about filling space and empty space that sits downtown.
Yes.
Now they have this ever expanding group of people who are actually doing economic development work that have their offices right there in the heart of downtown. And so it's just everything I love about, small towns, and everything I love about really busting the idea that, it's hard to get old businesses to change. It's like that you're just going to have a certain kind of business that's going to die off. Where you have new generations, I think there's all kinds of activation and rejuvenation.
And I just heard 1 in 3 business owners are over the age of 65. That number just kind of blew me away. And it behooves us to really start to working with the next generation and the one after that and the one after that, and to let go of some of these things. And hopefully that's happening. I see it more and more. And this kind of work that you're doing, it in the book, I could take this book to a 90-year-old business owner and say, see, she says I have to do these things to grow our business. Oh, here's some free resources. Let's work on those. Let's answer these questions. It really is not so much how to, but take a minute to think about what it is you do and what you want to do. Oh, and you want to do that? Well, go here and do this. Yeah. Am I explaining this horribly? Probably.
No, but, I mean, I'm a coach, and so it's so important to me that people don't just get excited about an idea, but they also have something that they can apply. And a lot of what I find that's been so helpful in doing this work with my clients, and then also, writing it for the book, is we often need to break things down in a way that is so much more specific when it is an area that, in my case, I'm just naturally, like, as I said, drawn to building community, or I love to build relationships and it's so easy. It's so helpful to work with many people where they don't have that same facility. They have strengths in totally different areas. And mainly, like, one of the main things about the book, it's like a love letter to ease and like taking things a little bit slower and recognizing that when you're really wanting to build strong relationships, it actually starts much earlier than that very transactional business advice that I know a lot of my clients just kind of bristle at. And then they'll say things like, I'm just not a marketer, like I just can't market. And often it's because they're being asked to do something, to like reach out and ask a total stranger for something before they've really taken the time to be discerning about who are they looking to connect with and what are ways to create just a natural, organic way of getting to know each other before you might get to the point of doing business together.
That's simply brilliant. There's just enough woo-woo in the book to get you really excited, but there's so many books that stop there. And the Widest Net does not stop there. It gives you the place to be excited and then to go out and really do things, to put things into action and take the small steps that matter. And I'm a huge fan of small steps. So thank you for putting that into the book. Where can we get this book and when can we get it?
Yes, so you can get it in bookstores everywhere, just everywhere books are sold. My publisher is McGraw-Hill, so you can get it, they distribute everywhere, which is great. We have, at the time of this recording, we've had an update. There are supply chain issues related to book printing, believe it or not. So it will come out, the hard copy will come out November 3rd.
Okay,
It could be some electronic versions, or the audiobook is available a little bit earlier because that's sort of what's happening with some books. But it will be out probably by the time we publish this, within a month. And I have some really cool pre-order goodies. Speaking of workbooks, if people pre-order before the launch date, you can get a workbook that has all the exercises in it, and all you need to do is just go to my site, which is pamelaslim.com/the widest net, and purchase the book, and then just enter in that information into the site, and we'll share all kinds of really cool ideas and tools with you. Yeah,
perfect. I know I ordered it. Now I have to go look and see. I think I did IndieBound because I support the
that's right.
small independent businesses. But you're right. You can buy it anywhere that books are sold.
Yes.
There was one more question I have for you. Isn't that awful? It was in my head.
Well, hey, we all help. One of the taglines I have for the book is we all need each other, right? Including, when you can have that moment. I'm curious, I would love just to say, because you and I have done so much work, you've done it much longer than I have, about this idea of really activating, small towns, and what's really unique and special about working in a town, because there's part of what I know I've experienced that's that is so, like, we can think it's only kind of brick and mortar businesses. People are like, oh no, my business is totally different because, that person has a restaurant or they have a cafe and I'm a lawyer. So what in the world could that cafe owner teach me, about marketing? And sometimes vice versa. What I've found, if anything, in working here and connecting people, is we can learn so much from each other by looking at the ways in which so many of the brick and mortar businesses have such strength of truly understanding what it means to connect with a customer, like truly understanding what it means to understand their needs, right? And like rotate your inventory based on seeing what people want. The other thing that I think is so powerful, and I feel so proud about work that so many people on the ground here in Mesa have worked on, is during the time of COVID, when I know it hit so many main streets everywhere so hard, because of having really strong relationships and looking at these partnerships with nonprofits and things that were happening, we didn't lose any businesses. Like during that time, there were like some of our partners, RAIL, which is Retail Arts Innovation and Livability, which is a nonprofit CDFI, kind of community development bank. They help to get millions of dollars in the pockets of restaurant owners and brick and mortar owners. I can't say enough about how important like having relationships were to that point, and also never assuming that just because you might have resources, and this is true, right, in a pandemic or not, we can say, hey, there's development happening in this town and there are millions of dollars available that small businesses can take advantage of. You need to have these community translators. You need to have somebody who is helping sometimes to just remove the mystery about how you walk through the process of getting access to resources. But so much of the small town ethos is about people helping each other, having sometimes businesses that seem like they're in direct competition with each other, but looking at the way that people are generous and share information, I think is a model that a lot of the maybe pure service-based businesses need to look at and learn from.
And we're meant to work together. We're meant to have businesses inside of businesses. We're meant to have artists showcase their work in lawyers' offices or insurance agents. The more we figure out how to partner together and do really different cool things, the more beautiful our world becomes, first of all, but the more connected we become. And that's important. I have a secret that I use when I go to a community to help them find practical steps for a brighter future. I start by asking everybody I talk to, what do you want? And then I shut up. And I'm like, what do you mean? What do I want? And I'm like, what do you want? What do you want for your town? What do you want? And it's amazing to me the conversations that begin because you ask somebody what they want. Often I've heard nobody's ever asked me that before.
That's right.
It's like, well, now I am. What do you want? and you know, the thing that I love so much about this book is that it works for all kinds of businesses
Mm.
and individuals looking to get into business. It's not just for somebody already in business or trying to grow their business. I'm happy that you gave me the opportunity to take a good look at it, and also to be able to share where people can get it and insist they buy it and talk more about it. It's just that valuable for me.
I so appreciate it, Deb. You know, and it's one thing I know you and I have always just really, really resonated on, that to me goes to the heart of like why to do the work and why to write the book. People can feel so much more grounded and better when they know they're not alone, right? When you can have the difference of like coming into a place where people often will walk around here and just be like, man, that just kind of feels special. Like, what is it that, you know, that's happening here? It's not by accident. And there's certainly enough movement in the world and, you know, smart people doing all kinds of things to make business transactions as helpful as possible. I feel like that's going really well, and we don't necessarily need help with that. Where I really want to make a contribution in support of work you're doing, and Becky and so many colleagues in this area, is to help share things that might not be visible to people, right? About the fact that communities don't just you know, happen overnight, but also there are very specific things you can do to allow people to feel much more connected. And it just makes you feel better. And it's
Well,
much, much better for your business bottom line as well.
you're building someplace you want to live. When you're
Yes.
community building, you're putting together a place that you want to live and be happy and do work in.
Mhm.
You know, people sometimes don't understand what community building is. They think it's the city is going to come in and make my community really nice, make the streets pretty, and make sure people have money, and there's all these grants. Well, that's not what community building is.
Mm-mm.
Those are all things that are involved, but it is so much more than that.
Yeah.
And by giving me a little bit of the woo-woo and a lot of the practicality, the Widest Net, I think, really will be helpful to a whole lot of people, Pamela, a whole lot. You
I
make
am
my
very
heart
thankful.
shine. Thank you. I want to thank you for your time. I look forward to November 3rd, when everybody can get this book, but they can pre-order now and
Yes,
just go to PamelaSlim.com. All the directions are there.
that's right.
Absolutely.